Alright guys, so today we're going to talk about wicking the Griffin RTA. So this is going to be the way that I prefer to have it wicked. Obviously there's other ways to do it. This is just what I feel gives the best performance on this RTA. So like with any RTA, in my opinion, wicking is just as important as the coils you put on there. RTAs can be real sensitive to the kind of wick that you put in there and how long it is and all that kind of stuff. So it really makes a huge difference. You can't just put cotton in there any way you want to and it perform the way that you want it to. So I tend to prefer a kind of very dense, lots of flavor, um, wicking really fast. So I build my wick to get that. So just kind of keep that in mind. Um, there's more than one way to do any RTA wicking. So this is just the way that I prefer. And I've tried all different kinds. Um, but yeah, it makes a huge difference on this tank, the way that you wick it. You don't want to have too little cotton or too much, and you don't want to make them too long or too short. So if you want, you can leave this wick retention ring on there and just kind of stuff them in there, and it doesn't really work very well for me when I do that. So that's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this off. And we're left with just the coils there. Now I'm using rayon, and rayon doesn't expand really when you add juice to it, but cotton does. So that's kind of something that you'll want to keep in mind when you're trying to figure out if you've overstuffed the coils or not, that it's going to plump up just a little bit if you're using cotton. So you kind of just have to learn the right amount to put in there. This might be just a little bit too small because I'm using 3 millimeter diameter. You want to be able to pull the wick back and forth and not really move the coils. Mine's moving just a little bit, but that's okay. You don't want to. You just want to have the right amount of resistance, not too much, but you want to be able to feel a little bit of resistance there. Kind of takes longer with rayon to get it, you know, strand long enough to put it in there. So cotton's a little bit easier. Okay, so I've got my 2 strands in there. I feel like they're the right diameter, stuffing the coils the right amount. Now I'll just cut off the excess just to kind of get it out of the way because I don't have big long tails hanging there. And this wicking method, it'll work with other RTAs too, just the kind of principle behind it. So you want to try and limit the amount of cotton that the juice has to pass through to get up to where you're heating it. So the longer your legs are, the more that cotton has to travel through, and it's just not going to wick fast enough for you to be able to hit it as often as you want. You'll have to wait for it to catch up. And the way that I do this, I can't get a dry hit out of it. It'll go, I can just chain vape it for minutes and minutes and it'll be fine. So you kind of want to use this little line right here, right where the threads are for the wick retention, as a guide. Pull the cotton down like it's going to be. You can kind of judge where it's going to end up, right about there. Pull it down, pull your scissors in, keep it at about a flat angle, don't angle it too much. Keep it flat and snip. Maybe just a tiny bit more. And I'll show you why I'm choosing that length when I get the wick retention ring on there. So I'll do the same for the other three. Okay, so you can kind of just smush them down in the channel just to see these are still just a little too long. You want them to go down to the bottom of this notch, right where the top of my finger is, right in that notch. So this one's okay. This one's just a little bit too long. Just cut a tiny bit off of there. If you take the time to do it like this, you'll end up being rewarded. I think it wicks plenty fast enough. I know some people on YouTube complain about the Griffin, but I just don't think they're wicking it like this. But that's my opinion. All right, it looks good. Sorry for all the little stray rayon bits of fuzz. So now you want to grab the wick ring, put it back down on there, and before you screw it in, just kind of line up the cotton in the channels. Doesn't have to be perfect. Snip that big poof off of there. All right. This wick ring, it can be kind of hard to screw on there with the cotton in place, so you just kind of, you got to be patient with it. You got to be gentle so you're not moving the cotton or touching it too much, because you don't want to touch it with your fingers too much. Okay, so I've got it threaded on there, right? I can feel it just sliding down there. You want to try and get it nice and tight on there, but do that without disturbing the cotton too much. There, it's tight. Now I can just kind of clean up my work just a little bit, push that cotton down in there just a little bit. Make sure I don't block my airflow holes. That one's already perfect. Like I said, rayon's a little bit harder to deal with because it's got all those little fuzzy strands that cotton doesn't have. Okay, so the whole concept behind this is that you want to just have enough cotton in there to block these juice feed holes, but not enough to sit in these channels, because that's just too much cotton in there. That's more space, more distance that the juice has to travel. So if you have enough just to block these holes, the juice won't leak. If you don't have enough in there, it'll flood, and then it'll end up spitting the juice out the air holes. So if you have just enough to block the channels, that's perfect. And this will feed as fast as you want it to, but it won't leak. So most people that have problems with RTAs leaking, that's why they're just not wicking it right. You can add juice to it just to prime it and to see what it'll look like. Once it's wet, make sure that all of those 4 juice holes are lined up and filled up with the wick, so it's not going to leak. This one's just a tiny bit short, but that's okay. That'll still block. Now I like to not have the cotton totally saturated, just a little bit, and then when I put it on here, I can tell if it's wicking right. So you put it on here, fill up your juice. Open your juice flow control. What you can do is take a couple dry hits on it, not firing it, just breathing through it. And see how the bubbles come up. So if it were going to leak, these bubbles would just continue to come up and then juice would start pouring out the bottom. But it's holding its own now. That was just it filling up the cotton. And don't expect to see bubbles out of all of the holes because all the holes are kind of linked together by the air in the middle, so it's not necessary. Only one juice is coming in all the holes, but only air is coming out of one of the holes, if that makes sense. So yeah, you're good to go now. Be sure to check out our other videos, build videos, and give this wicking method a try. And let me know what you think in the comments.